Merhaba arkadaşlar. Benim adım Manoj
Benim adım Aparna.
ve Türkiye'ye hoş geldiniz. Give me just 2 minutes to show off my Turkish skills. After that I will switch to English, I promise. Evet, çok az Türkçe konuşabiliyorum. İyi değilim. Çok kötüyüm. Sadece A1 öğrenciyim. Anlamıyorum fakat konuşmayı çok zor. Peki, dün Mumbai'dan uçakla İstanbul'a gittik. Daha sonra başka bir uçakla İstanbul'dan Cappadocia'ya, Kayseri şehriye gittik. Daha sonra bu arabayı kiraladık ve şimdi Goreme'de kalkıyorum. Eğer Türksen aşağıya yazınız. Benim Türkçe nasıl? Merak ediyorum. Şimdi Türkçe bitti. İngilizce. And yes, give me 2 more minutes for my other idle pursuit, history. I'll try to go through the 12,000 years of Turkish history in 2 minutes. After that, the visuals from day 1 will start. Cappadocia belongs to a larger region called Anatolia. Anatoly means east in Greek for obvious reasons. It is home to one of world's oldest settlements, Göbekli Tepe. Around 1600 BC, this became part of the Hittite Empire, one of the great Bronze Age civilizations, and they famously fought the great Ramesses to a draw in Kadesh. The first cave dwellings in Cappadocia were dug during this Hittite period. In the 1st century BC, Rome conquered this region and made it part of their empire. In 324 AD, Constantine moved the capital of the empire to Constantinople and makes Christianity the state religion. The Roman Empire soon splits, and the eastern part is what we refer to as the Byzantine Empire. Most of the rock-cut churches in Cappadocia were carved during this Byzantine era, 4th to 12th century AD. In the 7th century, Arab raids start and Turks take over a century later. Most of the underground dwellings were dug during this period as a means to escape these raids. After the 1071 Battle of Manzikert, Byzantium loses control of Cappadocia and the Seljuk Sultanate of Rome gets established. Ottomans replace them in the 14th century, and in 1453 they finally take over Constantinople, bringing an end to the 1500-year-old Roman Empire. Ottomans hold on till the modern state is established post-World War I.
So good morning. We are in Turkey. This is the first day of our trip. We are in Goreme, the heart of Cappadocia. So today will be all the sights of this region.
Cappadocia is famous for its incredible landscape. It is more magical than any fairy tale, more whimsical than any Bollywood set, and more surreal than any Dali painting. The region's unique geological formations are the result of millions of years of tectonic activity and volcanic eruptions. The region was once a vast shallow sea, but around 60 million years ago, tectonic activity caused the seabed to rise and form a high plateau. Over time, volcanic eruptions covered the plateau with ash and lava, which eventually solidified into a soft rock called tuff. The tuff was then subjected to erosion by wind and water, which carved out the distinctive rock formation that the region is known for today. Our day started off at the Uçhisar Castle, the tallest volcanic outcrop in the region. Although named a castle, it wasn't ever one in its history. The vast network of hidden tunnels inside it gave refuge to the locals when the enemy armies overtook the surrounding plains. One of the absolute must-sees in Cappadocia is the Goreme Open Air Museum. It houses a clutch of 9th to 13th century Byzantine churches with the most vibrant and best preserved frescoes in the entire region. The highlight is the Karanlık Church. Karanlık means dark in Turkish. It gets its name from the fact that it had hardly any windows and hence always dark on the inside, which in turn has helped preserve its wonderful frescoes. Unfortunately, photography isn't allowed inside, so you have to come and see these for yourself. Another must-see is checking out one of the several underground cities of the region. We chose Derinkuyu, the largest and the deepest of the lot. Since these were dwellings and not churches, there are no frescoes inside. You come here to see the ingenious hacks, such as ventilation shafts to secret passages and doorways, that the people invented to be able to hide under the ground. These dwellings did exist at least since the 4th century BC, and we don't know their original purpose. They were greatly expanded during the times of the Arab and Turkish raids of the 7th to 10th century AD. For lunch, we stopped by one of the several restaurants outside, dishing out the traditional local dish, gozlemes. There are several vegetarian choices like brinjal, potatoes, cheese, etc.
Yeah, it is very, very good. Actually, it reminds me of our stuffed kulchas. So, really delicious.
With the must-sees of our list, it was time to go where tourists become the curiosity. A 40-minute drive brought us to Eski Gümüşler Monastery. Eski means old, Gümüş means silver. Adding ler or lar is how you make nouns plural in Turkish. It is one of the larger monasteries in Cappadocia. We don't know how old the monastery is, but the frescoes have been dated to be between 7th and 11th centuries AD. One of its frescoes is this Smiling Mary fresco, touted as being the only Smiling Mary icon in existence. We got our own reason to smile right outside the monastery. That's Aparna eating cherries right under a cherry tree. And it's not these cherries that she is eating, we bought it. Turkish cherries are wonderful. Çok lezzetli. And this is the driving loop we did today. On the drive back to Goreme, we saw a lot more monasteries and churches. The pick would be the 11th century Karabaş Church in the remote Soğanlı Valley, which had some wonderful, although fading frescoes. And this 9th century Stephanos Church, which is part of the Keşlik Monastery complex, with this vibrant ceiling fresco. Here is where we stayed for 3 nights in Cappadocia, Elisi Cave House. It's not that great, but it is centrally located and the only one we could find that was less than $100 a night.
Hello folks, it's day 2 from Turkey. Today we'll be seeing more sights of Cappadocia. And this is the sunrise viewpoint at Goreme.
After watching the sunrise, we drove 2 hours to the Ihlara Valley. If you have 2 days in Cappadocia and a car, you must put Ihlara on your itinerary. This valley is 14 kilometers long one way, and walking is the only way to see it. You are mostly walking in the shade and by the river, and the towering cliffs on either side house many Byzantine churches. You are guaranteed to find yourself alone in most of these churches, and many of them have well-preserved frescoes. The churches are not evenly distributed. You would have covered almost all by the halfway point. So most people, which included us, would quit at the halfway point and take a taxi back to the start. At the quarterway point, there is an excellent tea house dishing out delicious gozlemes. There is also a monastery complex at the very end of the trail that you should not miss. Since this is at the very end, you can reach it by road. This Selime monastery complex is the largest in Cappadocia and consists of a church, a cathedral, a monastery, a winery, a kitchen, all carved into the conical tuff formations that is ubiquitous in this area. The scenery and the setting is simply spectacular. This was the driving route for the day. Ihlara ate up all our morning, and in the afternoon we drove back to Goreme via Güzelert. Güzelert is a pretty little Cappadocian village housing more Byzantine churches. We could only locate one using Google Maps, and there was this panoramic viewpoint right in front of it. This view alone was worth the detour. 6 kilometers from Güzelert stands this lonely red church. Built in the 6th century, likely during the reign of Justinian, this is probably the oldest non-rock cut church in Cappadocia and a textbook example of early Byzantine architecture. Next, we stopped by the lovely little 10th century El Nazar's church in Goreme, which looks like this on the outside and like this on the inside. Lovely frescoes. Since we still had a couple of hours left in the day, we drove 10 kilometers further to Zellwey, which houses another open-air museum. Zellwey was a monastic retreat between the 9th and the 13th century AD. Footfall here is much lesser when compared to Goreme, as the churches here lacked frescoes. But the place made it up with its fantastic setting. Walking these remote ruins illuminated by the setting sun in relative isolation was a wonderful experience.
Hello folks, so it is day 3 from Turkey. So this morning we did the breathtaking balloon ride, And then now we are walking the rose and red trail, and we are next to the Hitchley Church.
Let's rewind the clock a bit to 3:30 a.m. to be precise. That's when we had to wake up for our first hot air balloon flight of our lives. Hot air ballooning is incredibly weather dependent. The pilot can only control its up-down movement. The horizontal movement is completely at the mercy of the prevailing winds. So unless the wind speed is within a narrow range of 10 to 20 kilometers per hour, the balloons cannot fly. Of the 3 mornings in Cappadocia, the balloon flew only once. Thankfully, it was on the one day for which we had reserved our seats. The flights aren't cheap. It was about $275 per head, and you need to pre-book months in advance, especially during the high tourist season. But it is indeed an experience of a lifetime, and Cappadocia is the best destination for such an experience. The topology is incredibly pretty. If you are going to balloon only once in your lifetime, Cappadocia is where you should do it. So if you are coming all the way to Cappadocia and you can afford it, do budget a morning for the flight and take your chances. We booked our experience through the Royal Balloons. We wholeheartedly recommend them. The contact is in the description. These last few seconds of the footage is of our balloon captured using the onboard 360-degree camera. With such fabulous topology, it is little surprise that Cappadocia is a hiker's heaven. There are several valleys here that you can hike through. The rose and the red valleys are deemed to be the best. The problem was finding the trailhead. It wasn't well marked at all. What we did was use Google Maps to guide us to one 10th century Byzantine Hatchley church, which we knew for sure lies on the intersection of the Rose and the Red Valley trails. So if we reached that church by one route and got back by another, we probably ended up walking bits and pieces of both the trails. It really doesn't matter which trail you walk. The scenery is breathtaking regardless. The only issue was the baking heat, which became unbearable by 11 a.m. Do these hikes early or late in the day, especially in the summer. Next, we drove to Caesarea. It was the erstwhile Caesarea that the Romans found in the 1st century. Note that the letter C was always hard in Latin. So it is Centem and not Centum, Cicero and not Cicero, and Caesarea and not Caesarea. Caesarea became the capital of the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum in the 12th and the 13th centuries, and hence has some great examples of Seljuk architecture. But first, lunch. We got to taste the famous Turkish doner for the first time in our lives. It is usually stuffed with meat, but they veganized it for us by substituting the meat with fries. The 3 best examples left by the Seljuks are this 1267 Sahabiye Madrasa, this 1238 Hunat Hatun complex, which consists of a mosque, tomb, madrasa and a hammam, and this 13th century Çifte Medrese, considered to be the world's first medical training school. Today it houses the Museum of Seljuk Civilization. Among the pre-Seljuk structures are this 2nd century Roman tomb and this Caesarea Castle, a fort built by the Roman Emperor Gordian III in 240 AD. But most of what you see is later 13th century Seljuk reconstruction.
Hello everyone, this is day 4 from Turkey. Yesterday night we flew from Caesarea to Istanbul, and we stayed the night in Istanbul, and today morning we drove to Edirne, and we are in the 3-balcony mosque in Edirne.
That's where Edirne is located. If you drive any more west, you will run out of Turkey. This was the erstwhile Adrianopolis, founded by the Emperor Hadrian around 130 AD during his famous travels around the empire. In 1362, the 3rd Ottoman Sultan Murad I captured the city and made it as the new capital of the Ottoman Empire. Hence, Edirne has some of the best examples of early Ottoman architecture. First up, the Grand Selimiye Mosque, built by the greatest Islamic architect Mimar Sinan. Contemporary of Michelangelo and no less in greatness or talent, Mimar rated this mosque as his greatest achievement. Despite one of its minarets bandaged by scaffolding, the mosque was picture perfect. In front of the mosque is this fairly modern statue of Mimar, where you can capture this wonderful art and artist picture. The mosque was commissioned by Sultan Selim II, hence the name Selimiye Mosque, and was built between 1568 and 1575, long after Edirne ceased to be the capital, and hence not an example of the early Ottoman architecture that I had sold you on. For that, you just need to look away from the masterpiece, because right in front is the old mosque. That was built in 1414 by Mehmed I, the grandson of Murad I who had captured Edirne. It was the first imperial mosque to be built in the city and is famous for these huge calligraphic inscriptions. The early Ottoman architecture looked like a boxed fortress with several equally sized domes. By the time of Sinan, this evolved into mosques with characteristic large central dome. Then there is the Uch Sharafali or the three balcony mosque that Aparna referred to, named so because one of its minarets has three balconies. All the four minarets of this mosque are different from each other. This was built between 1438 and 1447 and commissioned by Murad II. He is the son of Mehmed I who built the old mosque. Murad II also built this nearby Muradiye mosque which was completed a decade earlier. This Muradiye mosque is noted for its tiles that decorate the mihrab and the walls of the prayer hall. This was our first sighting of the famous Iznik tiles that would be commonplace in most mosques from this period onwards. About half a century later, in 1488 to be precise, Bayezid II, the grandson of Murad II, built this large complex which houses a mosque, a hospital and a medical school. The hospital and the medical school remained in operation for 4 centuries till the Russo-Turkish War of 1878. Edirne is not all mosques. It is also famous for its Ottoman-era bridges. We visited a couple. First was this Meriç Bridge or New Bridge, built in 1842. And the second was this Tunka Bridge, built in 1615. Yes, 400 plus years ago, and still functional. And we drove on it twice. Wow, just wow. Sometime between all this mosque hopping, we had our lunch. The restaurant right outside to the old mosque had a large buffet with several vegetarian dishes.
So today we are eating this for our lunch. So this is banana peppers, and these are flat beans, some potatoes and filled grape leaf. And these are potatoes again, and these are like French fries. And this is pulao, so it's really delicious. Whatever we are eating today, fantastic.
Edirne'de bu bisimin oda. Biraz büyük. Çok temizli. Bu odadan manzara iyi değil. Sadece parking lot var.
Hello folks, so day 5 from Turkey. We are at the ancient city of Troy.
In order to get to Troy, we did something that no one could do up until 2 years ago. Drive over the Dardanelles. Dardanelles is the narrow natural strait that connects the Aegean Sea and the Sea of Marmara, the yellow bit shown in this map. And the first bridge that spanned it was completed only in 2022. And that is also the longest suspension bridge on the planet. Well, as of August 2024. The bridge is called the 1915 Çanakkale Bridge. Çanakkale is a town on the Asian side of the bridge. 1915 refers to the famous Gallipoli campaign during the First World War. Gallipoli is on the European side of the bridge, and it is where the Allied troops landed hoping for a quick victory and were surprised to find a stiff resistance from the Ottomans, who eventually ended up victorious. The numerous war memorials that we saw in Australia were dedicated to their soldiers who lost their lives in this campaign. Troy was inhabited from about 3600 BC to 500 AD and was a strategically important town throughout its history. As a result, it was constantly under threat from external attack. It was destroyed and rebuilt at least 9 times over this 4,000-year period. The famous war detailed in Iliad, if it happened at all, would have happened during the late Bronze Age, about 1300 BC. At that time, Troy was a vassal state of the Hittite Empire and was called Vilusa in Hittite. Vilusa became Ilios and later Ilion in Greek, and hence the name of the famous epic. Walking the atmospheric ruins and ruminating over its long history was a wonderful way to spend the morning. The site also contains a very well laid out modern museum. The seaside city of Çanakkale, located half an hour north of here, houses the famous Trojan horse. Yes, the very same one that was used in the 2004 movie Troy. A near 4-hour drive brought us to Bursa. It's a very ancient city existing at least since 5000 BC. It is named after Prusias I, who was the king of Bithynia around 200 BC. Bithynia was one of the Hellenistic kingdoms that popped up after Alexander's conquest. Its last king bequeathed the kingdom to Rome in 74 BC, and Byzantium inherited it later. The Ottoman Beylik was founded in 1299 by Osman I, and his son Orhan captured Bursa in 1326 and made it as the capital of the budding empire. Bursa remained the capital of Ottomans till it shifted to Edirne in 1362. We had just enough time to check out one of Edirne's sites and picked the Muradiye complex. It was built by Murad II, the same sultan who built the Uch Sharafali and Muradiye mosques in Edirne. This 1426 complex in Bursa houses a mosque, a madrasa, a hospice, and numerous tombs, including that of the sultan himself. The sultan's tomb is pretty Spartan. The most lavishly decorated tomb here is that of Cem Sultan. This Cem Sultan is the son of the famous Mehmed the Conqueror, who conquered Constantinople in 1453. Cem Sultan lost out in the Battle of Succession to his half-brother Bayezid II. Bu Bursa'da bizimin odayı. Standard Ibis room.
Hello everyone, it's day 6 from Turkey. We are in the city of Bursa and overlooking the 20-dome mosque.
The fourth Ottoman Sultan was Bayezid I. He won the pivotal Battle of Nicopolis in 1396, which ended the penultimate crusade. Before that battle, he had promised to build 20 mosques in case of victory. But once victorious, he built this one mosque with 20 domes instead. The mosque was completed in 1399. 3 years later, he faced a humiliating defeat at the hands of Tamerlane at the 1402 Battle of Ankara. He was taken captive and died in captivity, the only Ottoman Sultan to suffer this fate. The hill opposite to the mosque, known as Topkapi, houses the tombs of the first two Ottoman Sultans, Osman I and his son Orhan. We were surprised that the founders of one of the greatest empires had such humble tombs. The tomb of Orhan was built on top of a Byzantine church and hence still has some old mosaics. The hill also houses a clock tower built in 1905. Chaos predictably followed the capture of Sultan Bayezid by Tamerlane. A decade later, in 1412, his son Mehmed I stabilized things and re-established the empire. He immediately set about building a complex that consisted of this mosque, the nearby tomb, his own tomb, and a madrasa. These are commonly referred to as the Green Mosque and the Green Tomb, thanks to the brilliant Iznik tiles. The madrasa today houses a museum. This 1442 Irgandi bridge, located just before the complex, has an uncanny resemblance to Ponte Vecchio in Florence. This Emir Sultan Mosque is located a little after the Green Complex. Emir Sultan was a dervish and a scholar, and the son-in-law of the Sultan Bayezid I. With such great highways, we could get back to Istanbul in double quick time. Istanbul started off as Byzantion, a colony of the Greek city Megara. In 330 AD, Constantine made this the capital of the Roman Empire, and the city was renamed later in his honor. He made Christianity as a state religion and set about building the first Hagia Sophia. That did not last long. In 415, Emperor Theodosius II rebuilt it. He is more well known for these walls that protected the city until its eventual fall in 1453. In 532 AD, the second church also burned down during the infamous Nika riots. In 560 AD, the Emperor Justinian built the next Hagia Sophia, which still stands today. The church was stripped bare of its precious art, first during the iconoclasm of the 8th century and next during the infamous Latin sack of 1204. In 1453, Mehmed the Conqueror finally breached the impregnable Theodosian walls and ended the 1500-year-old Roman Empire. He immediately converted the church to a mosque, and the minarets were added by the subsequent sultans. Very few buildings on the planet has witnessed more history or drama. Standing on its balcony and looking down into the vast interior or gaping at one of its historic mosaics was a truly emotional and moving experience. Such moments are the reason why traveling is such an addictive endeavor. A hop, skip and a jump away from Hagia Sophia is another Byzantine engineering marvel, a vast subterranean cistern. Built by Justinian, this was the main water tank of his new capital. These pillars were all salvaged from the pre-existing pagan temples, and once in a while you do bump into a Roman sculpture. Here is the famous upside-down Medusa of the Basilica cistern. No one really knows the history behind it.
Good morning. So it's day 7 from Turkey. We are in Istanbul today and we'll be seeing all the sights of Istanbul.
We started the day at the other magnificent building of Istanbul, the Blue Mosque. It was built between 1609 and 1617 by Sultan Ahmed I. Turks could never manage to come up with a good succession rule. This is true for all Turkish empires and not just the Ottomans. Fratricide was the rule of the day. The worst instance happened when Ahmed I's father, Mehmed III, executed 19 brothers when he came to power. Ahmed put an end to all this madness, and his tomb in front of the mosque is a revered site as a result. When Mehmed conquered Constantinople, he immediately started to work on a royal residence. It remained the official residence of the Sultan and his court till 1856. It got its famous moniker Topkapi, or the Cannon Gate in English, only in the 19th century. Till that time, it was simply known as the New Palace. Every subsequent sultan built, extended, renewed what he inherited, and the resulting complex is now a maze of opulent buildings, lavish courtyards, marble terraces, and finely carved pavilions. The famous imperial harem occupied one of the sections of the private apartments of the sultan. It was home to Sultan's mother, the concubines and wives of the sultan, and the rest of his family, including children. The palace kept us busy till lunch. After a quick stop at the adjacent archaeological museum to look at its signature sarcophagi collection from the royal necropolis of Aya, we headed to the next 3 important mosques of the city. The first was the 1557 Sulaymaniye Mosque, commissioned by Sulayman the Magnificent and built by the famous architect Mimar Sinan. The mosque also houses the tomb of the Sultan in its premises. The second was the Fateh Mosque, constructed in 1470 on the site of the Church of the Holy Apostles. It was commissioned by Mehmed the Conqueror and also houses his tomb in its premises. The third was the lovely little gem, the Kariye Mosque. It started off its life as a Byzantine church in the 4th century AD and houses some of the best frescoes and mosaics of the late Byzantine period, that is 9th to 12th century AD. After the rise of Islam in the early 600s, Byzantium suffered a series of humiliating defeats against the Arabs for a century. This led them to believe that God has abandoned them for the Muslims, and they attributed it to their churches having icons, which the Bible specifically prohibits. This led to the infamous iconoclasm, the movement where icons were actively hunted down and destroyed. This lasted from 720 to 842 AD. Hence, all the frescoes and mosaics you would encounter in Turkey and Greece would not date back more than the 8th century. The churches could be older, but the icons would be mostly 9th century or later. Our long walk today took us past this Roman aqueduct built by Emperor Valens in the 4th century, this make-your-own perfume shop, and this.
Finally, Turkish dondurma. How is it?
Very tasty. The flavors, we didn't know the names, Turkish names, but whatever we have picked, it's very tasty.
We ended the day at the Galata Tower, a tower that dates back to 1348, built by the Genoese who established a colony here about a century earlier. The original Galata Tower was built by Justinian in the 6th century AD, which, like many things in the city, was destroyed by the 1204 sack. Now, what exactly is this 1204 sack that I keep referring to? This refers to the infamous Fourth Crusade, which was launched in 1202 by the Latins, namely the Holy Roman Empire, the Kingdom of France, and the Republic of Venice. The original plan was to conquer Egypt, but they ended up getting mired in the Byzantine power struggle and sacking Constantinople in 1204.
Bu İstanbul'da bizimin odayı. Çok güzel.
Hello everyone, so it's the last day from Turkey. Today we'll see all the last few sites of Istanbul that's left.
After a brief stop at another Byzantine church, we headed to the Dolmabahce Palace. Nicknamed as the Little Hagia Sophia, this was the church of the saints Sergius and Bacchus, built in 536 by Justinian. The Dolmabahce Palace was built between 1843 and 1856 by the 31st Ottoman Sultan Abdülmecid I, and the royal residence was shifted here from the Topkapi. The European-style palace is opulence at the grandest possible scale. The palace cost 35 tons of gold and was home to 6 sultans until the abolition of the caliphate in 1924. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk used the palace as the presidential residence and breathed his last here. Photography isn't allowed on the inside, which was good in the hindsight. No pictures can do justice to the grandeur of the stately rooms, especially the stride-stopping grand ceremonial hall. Come, see it for yourself, and be prepared to get amazed. 2 kilometers from the palace is the most famous Instagram point in Istanbul. In the foreground is the Ortaköy Mosque, built in 1856 by the same Sultan who built the Dolmabahce. In the background is the first bridge that connected Europe and Asia, the Bosphorus Bridge, opened in 1973. The final mosque of our trip, the Bayezid Mosque, built in 1505 by Sultan Bayezid II, and architecturally the oldest mosque in Istanbul. The Fateh Mosque, which we saw earlier, is older, but it was completely destroyed by an earthquake, and what we see today is a reconstruction. The Grand Bazaar, established by Mehmed the Conqueror in 1453, this is the oldest covered market on the planet and a great place to end such a memorable trip. We also had our best meal of the trip here, a grand Turkish meal to conclude such a wonderful trip.
Şimdi Türkiye'de bizimin birinci ziyaret bitti. Bu kadar izlediğiniz için çok teşekkür ederim. Şimdi Aparna bizim de Türkiye'de en popüler yerleri için konuşuyor.
At number 10 would be the Selime Monastery at Ihlara Valley. At number 9, the 1915 Çanakkale Bridge. At number 8, the Cappadocia views. At number 7, the 20 Dome Mosque. At number 6, the Rose and Red Valley views. At number 5, Dolmabahce Palace. At number 4, the Blue Mosque. At number 3, the Topkapi Palace. At number 2, the Selimiye Mosque in Edirne. And at number 1 would be the Hagia Sophia.
Okay, Aparna, what's your best experience on the trip?
My best experience from the trip was the balloon ride in Cappadocia. It was a little expensive, so I'm quite grateful that we could afford it. But the breathtaking views were just really, really awesome.
Let me stick to food for my best experience. The Turkish vegetarian food were awesome. The best was the gozlemes that we ate in Cappadocia, and also the doner, vegetarian doner that we ate in Kayseri. Those were special. And of course, the drink, ayran. Ayran was exactly like the nirmor that we have back home. And Turks invented yogurt. The yogurt drink was perfect, especially for this hot weather. That's it, folks. Until we say hi from some other part of the world. Güle güle.
Bye bye.